Wow, this is great. Everyone's coming in. Okay, well, just a brief intro. I'm Nathan Raymond. I'm with Learn for Life Test Prep. It's my test prep company, Learn for Life Test Prep and Beyond. I help students achieve their highest possible scores on the U.S. college entrance exams like the SAT and the ACT. And I focus on students. I've worked quietly for the past 7 out of 15 years, just word of mouth. And based on my development of my curriculum and my program, I've decided to really launch and get out there and really help students across the world. So I'm also available now for students in Hong Kong, India, and elsewhere in Asia. And I've started to do this because I have been able to help students increase their test scores 11 points on the ACT. Really tremendous growth. And this happens because I take a really brain-centered approach to test prep. I think of it as an integration of academic learning and life skills. This is a moment where we can actually bring them together rather than making test prep an additional class, an additional burden. It's actually an integrator and a performance enhancer. So that's what I work on is how do we transfer these skills that are learned in school to other aspects of life? Because studies have shown that it's really, really hard to transfer skills, no matter how well they're learned, how well they're mastered, from one environment to another. And that goes into the way the brain is wired and optimized for particular situations and use cases. So what I work on with students is how to own their own knowledge so that it's accessible and can be applied into different situations. The other thing that I've come up with that's really helped students a lot, I had one student who was limited in his timing. He was supposed to do, should have done accommodations, had time and a half, but the school that he was looking at only accepted standard time. So he was limited. He just could not get past 43 questions on the ACT math, which is fine. That's why he had time and a half. But to get a 26, which was the required score, meant that 43 questions had to be right. So he had no room for error. That's when I developed the Answer GPS, which eliminated all the strategies that we'd been working on that I've been doing for years. And it just was mind-blowing because with Answer GPS, he scored a 26. If he scored a 26 on a standard timing, that meant that he answered every single question. That's literally what that means. So he was unable to do that by memorizing strategies, juggling all these different, was this one? Okay, so I got really good at this one, but then I couldn't do that one. So all this stuff was jumbling up. And the Answer GPS helped keep him on book, on message, so that he didn't have to feel like he had to solve every question. He had a framework to apply to every single question. And then we expanded that to every single subject on the ACT. Every question could actually be answered correctly with Answer GPS. It was a burden was lifted, and energy was saved, stress was relieved. It just became a golden opportunity. And I thought, you know what? I feel like this is something that I should share because students are suffering with these multiple strategies. Some students succeed, so it's great. Go for it. That's what you want to do. Take it, but highly recommend trying the Answer GPS. But this works really effectively the earlier you start, is the more you can get out of this program. So today we're discussing why waiting until 11th grade, which is often what people expect, if you wait till 11th grade for test prep, it might actually be holding your child back and might make it just that much harder to get the scores that you want. So as we go through this, please feel free to drop your questions in the comments and I will be sure to respond and find out what's going on with your questions. So let me know if you're in 10th, 11th grade, what grade you're in. I'd love to hear. Let's see what you guys got. 10th grade. Okay, great. This is awesome. 10th grade, 11th grade. Awesome. You're welcome. Totally. 11th grade, 9th grade. Whoa. Nice to see you in here. Great. Oh, we got an 8th grader? That's amazing. Okay, great. This actually applies If you're in 8th grade, you're applying you want taking the SHSAT, IC, SSAT, all standardized tests work with this. Great. All right. So this could be one of the biggest mistakes made in test prep is waiting till 11th grade. And why would we say that? Okay, so if you wait till 11th grade, let's just paint a little picture of what 11th grade is like. So if you're in 11th grade, you know right now that at the end of the year, this has been an intense year, right? So we have the most demanding year. This is the most demanding year we've had, right? This is a year, the AP, IB, get rid of that's all up in this year. We got to prepare for college apps, start getting ready for those. What does that mean, college apps? Well, this is the last full academic year that goes on your college applications. So you got to focus on those grades, right? Everyone knows that's super important. And it's also when you start like really peaking on extracurriculars. So let's get rid of those. Let's say, why do we need to focus on that? Okay. So what happens is that you start focusing on really maintaining academic performance. And then you think of test prep as another class with more work. Okay, that just piles it on. Who wants that? Then you got to take tests line up with APs. It's just kind of a whole mess. And the tests are offered all year round. So we can shift that cycle a little bit, and then we can use test prep to maximize performance junior year. So test prep can actually, if you start early, can actually increase performance junior year and relieve stress simultaneously while also boosting scores. That seems like a no-brainer to me, but let me know what you think. What's your biggest concern about your child's 11th grade workload? What is happening now? Drop something in the comments. Give me a little stress emoji if your child's feeling overwhelmed. Let me know how you're feeling. Yeah, overwhelmed. We got a lot of overwhelmed comments. Yes, sleepless nights. Oh, it's the worst, right? So let's think about how we can engage differently with test prep. Okay, so with 10th grade, you have a very different approach with how you can really dig into how the brain works and how it learns and start to rewire processes. What happens is when we learn in one particular environment, we can get really good at doing things in that environment. The question is, what happens when we transfer out of that environment? How does the knowledge bring us outside? And it usually doesn't work very well. It takes a lot of time and practice to learn how to transfer that knowledge outside, so you then relearn everything. Plus, by the time you're a junior, you probably forgot some of the stuff that you learned when you were in 4th grade. These tests are cumulative. So a bulk of the concepts that are on these tests comes from elementary school, comes from middle school, comes from early high school. So you can start working on all of that information now. You strengthen those concepts now in 10th grade. For those ninth graders, 8th graders, you strengthen those now. You're establishing a very strong foundation as concepts become radically more complex and advanced in 10th grade, 11th grade, junior year, and then senior year, college, etc. So this is an opportunity to really make sure that the foundation is solid, to make sure that everything can be supported, everything's understood as you go on to more complex things. For example, when students get into trigonometry, I often run into students who have trouble realizing that sine, cosine, and tangent are fundamentally ratios. So when you understand that they're fundamentally ratios, your ability to manipulate the concepts becomes amplified because you start to make these connections across the math time spectrum of learning, which is what I like to do as a guide, a coach, a knowledge guide. I drop in at this moment in the learning time, space-time continuum. And I've taught from from fourth grade through graduate school, right? I've taught 7-year-olds to 40-year-olds preparing for the GRE. So I think about the entire sequence and I work with students to hone their knowledge and synthesize it and integrate it in a way that is comprehensive and cross-disciplinary. So if you start in 10th grade, that gives you a chance to really rebuild and rework these kinds of knowledge enhancers and build a library of content in your brain that is easily accessible and is reliable. So that's what we want to look at. And let's look at 10th grade. So I got some of these circled here, right? So when you start in 10th grade, you enhance your skill building. Skill building becomes really, really important because there are skills that are learned in school that are school specific. And there are school skills that students teach themselves that become survival mechanisms. Study habits that aren't necessarily taught, but students come up with them, and then when they start working, they continue using them. But they might not be the most efficient methods. They may work, they may achieve really good grades, but there might be a different way to approach this to maximize brain performance. So that's what we work on, and we use test prep as a way to bring it all together. This also leads into the idea of practice with purpose. What does that mean, practice with purpose? Well, oftentimes test prep is overlaid on top of all the other subjects that a student is taking. So it becomes a burden. It becomes like, oh man, we don't have time for this test prep. Like, when are we going to do it? It's taking up 2.5 hours every weekend, or it's an hour and a half a week plus 4 hours of homework. All this stuff becomes like on top of an already demanding and busy schedule. This is overwhelming. So how are we supposed to balance that? Well, I'm totally aware of that, and I understand that it can detract from both the effectiveness of test prep and students' performance in school and extracurriculars and all this stuff. So what I work on doing is practice with purpose, which means the test prep work that we do can be practiced in schoolwork. And what that does, when you do the same methods, the same processes, the same frameworks that apply in the test, and you're learning how to do them in school, that reinforces your ability to transfer skill sets because you're changing environments with the same methodology and the same knowledge. So it strengthens this concept of skill transfer. It also allows you to reinforce the skills that we're doing because they're being practiced on a routine basis in daily activities, and they increase the student's ability to perform. Like, I remember what I was saying about efficiency of skill building and efficiency of habits that people develop over time. Maybe not be the best. They might be effective, but not the best. So we work on honing those, and just a call out for those, while we're talking about this 10th grade advantage, kind of maybe the secret weapon to test prep. I'd love to know from those parents of 11th graders out there, did you wish you had started earlier for your student? Have you still not started? Type wish in the comments if you wish you had started earlier. And what would your child have done with the extra time if test prep wasn't crowding their schedule? How would that have impacted them? So share below. Let's see what people say. Yeah, got a few wishes there. Okay, yeah. A few not started yet. That's okay. It's okay. We can still get there. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, what would your... Oh yeah, those are great. Yeah. So, but just more time on homework, better grades, better time management. Piano, yes. More time on piano, sports, volunteering, lots of college essays. Somebody wrote college essays. That's a great thing. So one of the things I also build in with test prep is for example, when we talk about grammar, we talk about reading comprehension. Those two combine to build skills that can actually transfer to the college essay writing process. So when I also coach students on college essay writing, it's not part of what we're talking about today, but college essay writing, this is an evolution of grammatical mastery and structural mastery of writing, understanding how people read, how to structure your writing to give your reader a map. So these it all ties together, and if you can start tests earlier, it allows students to own this knowledge, ingrain it, follow through, and then also be able to transfer it into different scenarios. So what we've talked about right now already is using the same methods to improve a student's ability to perform well on the test, but also in school and also in college applications. So those are just three right now, immediate transfers of the same skill set. A lot of other test prep companies, the content mastery is about like an overlay, and then the strategies become test specific. Like, identify this question type. What is it? Oh, it's a question talking about the analysis of this kind of problem, and then eliminate the answers based on this, and this. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What kind of question is this? So what that does is it creates this. It causes context switching to take place, and what context switching does, you look this up. There's research that shows that what happens is you lose 10 to 20% of your focus and energy every time you switch a task. So if you're talking about a 2 to 3 hour test where you're switching between multiple questions and multiple subjects, you're always working at a loss. There's no way you can get to 100%. So what I've done is eliminated all those and said, well, we can actually do one framework. And by teaching students of different learning styles, this is what I've come up with so that students can feel freer to understand how to turn the test into directions. They feel guided by the test rather than a battle with the test. So it's Answer GPS because you can map out the question, identify the directions, and just navigate to the answer. It's not about solving the question, and it's not about finding the answer. The directions are there, and you have to figure out how to read them. So those are really important things to consider. The other thing, so we talked about how it can improve 11th grade performance. How can that happen? Well, for example, in reading comprehension is something that we take for granted. Like, we learn about how to read for literary analysis in school. We get really good at that. But that is not the same way you read textbooks. So I work really hard with students on how to make their reading of information more efficient. And that is not a secret formula. That is actually based on the framework of what they learn in school about how to write. So what this does is a cycle of reinforcement. It reinforces the way that we write well to convey ideas, so we can actually read really well, so we can efficiently grasp ideas. And I'll be leading I invite you, if you like, you can sign up on the webpage. I'm going to be leading a Reading Rewired workshop. It's a parent preview, so parents are absolutely welcome, and primarily the ones invited, but they can totally bring their kids if they want. You parents out there, come see how you can transform your own writing. This free writing workshop, it's like, it'd be valued at like $1,500. I just want to share with people how impactful this just shift can be. So you can use it in business. You can use it in when you're reading articles about any kind of information, scanning the news. You just go, got it, done. It's not speed reading. It's understanding the framework and where authors drop the key information, targeting it, and learning how to identify that. So that's what we work on. Practice with purpose. Do it in school. Transfers to the test. Easy success. All right, one huge advantage, particularly for those in the international world, these test centers for when you're doing these become off-cycle tests. So if you start now, for example, or May, June, just kind of tail end of school, depending on where you are. In India, you're probably going back into school in July. You can target tests in the off season. So you can target tests in the end of the fall. You can target the December tests. You can target the ACT has a test in February. So you can target tests that are less crowded, less demanding. You could leave like April as a backup, but you've already done all your studying by April. So like by April, you're just taking practice tests and review, revision, like perfecting your ability to take the test and normalizing the test experience. What I like to do is make sure my students take the test enough times, enough practice times where they're like, they take the official test. They're like, this is just another Saturday. This is what I do on Saturday. I take a test and I get a 36 or I get a 1600. You know, so it makes it it makes it relaxed. It takes the pressure off. Makes it automatic. What we're talking about is changing automated behavioral responses. So what happens in math, for example, you look at a math test on the SAT or ACT, you see these math questions and you say like, what the brain automatically associates that with all the math tests that have been in school for, over a decade of these students' lives. And they see that, and then that process that happens in the math classroom happens in the test. The math classroom approach does not transfer successfully to the test. But Answer GPS transfers both back and forth. So you have to retrain the brain to make it disassociate this experience with that. If students have had kind of a math trauma, like traumatic experiences with teachers or difficulty understanding or things like that, then that is compounded on the test because of that associated behavioral response. So we have to work on kind of dismantling that trauma and allowing them to associate the test with a different experience, an experience of empowerment, positive associations, confidence. Answer GPS usually gives that to them. So that's one of the aspects that we do that we deal with there in reading comprehension. It's the same thing. You read words and sentences, automatically associate it with, like, I don't know, The Great Gatsby, Of Mice and Men, books that are novels. But these are not novels. These are more related to textbooks. Textbooks often don't get used the way they could be, which is as methodological tools. They are tools to learn how to read for information. So I often have students bring their textbooks into class with me. They drop a photo in, and we go over how to read that. So then that's the same reading they apply to the test, but then they can also do their history homework at the same time. So that's practice with purpose. And let's see what else we got here. So the other thing that happens is with this, we talked about this with the college essays, and the other thing, my arrow went backwards. And the other thing that happens is this reduces stress, right? So they learn how to handle anxiety and stressful situations because we practice mindfulness throughout our sessions. That becomes a reinforced habit, something they can practice in school, something that practices on the test, so that they learn how to control this, and it becomes, they have to put less effort into controlling stress. It becomes easier. So with time, we can build that. Then that transfers to anything, right? Once you learn how to control that, you can do that all the time. I have students who come back to me all the time and are like, "Are those mindfulness moments you taught me, those breathing exercises, I use them all the time in school. And I've even used them when I go out on an audition, or I had an interview before for college, and I was like, all right, got to do my box breathing so that I feel totally in charge right now." And it works, but it takes practice, and they get good at it. Okay. And you also learn how to manage your time better. So, some of the objections is like, well, they're not, my kid isn't ready yet. We got we got a timeline and I got to do it down. Kids, you don't have to be ready to get started. Okay? You can get started. That's what gets you ready. Right? It's too early to start, right? Maybe it's too, you think it's like, no, we can't do it yet. They don't know enough. Well, the most of the test, the content of the test is from their academic experience prior to where they are right now, right? It's a cumulative test. So most of the schooling has already happened. Not much takes place that's on the test between even freshman year, 9th grade and 11th grade. So that's something to be dismissed. And then the idea, like, won't they forget everything if they start now? That's the opposite. You forget more when you do base it on short-term memory. But when you build long-term memory, when you ingrain this in new neural pathways, you're reinforcing things for a lifetime. So it's the absolute opposite of that. But what I'd love to know is what's holding you back from starting test prep earlier? Like, is there something else? Is it one of those things? Let me know your biggest concern in the comments. If you're worried about burnout, you can put a 1. If you're concerned about timing, put 2, sorry. And if you're unsure about readiness, put 3. And let's see what's happening. What people put in. All right, I see a lot of 1s. Yep, 2s. Okay, a couple 3s throwing up. Oh, lots of 3s coming up now. Okay, great. So, if you feel like I answered your questions a little bit about that, please give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down if you still feel like you need some more persuasion about this. Okay, I'm seeing mostly thumbs up. Okay, I got a thumbs down. Okay, thumbs down. Tons of thumbs ups now. Okay, great. Okay, so for those of you who put a thumbs down, I get it. That's fine. You do how you need to do. Okay, but for my hundreds of students who I've worked with, as I've grown as a test prep tutor, I've succeeded more with my students who have achieved more success now that I've refined my approach. Blending my executive functioning coach background with test prep has elevated the effectiveness for my students. So that's something that I would love for you to keep in mind, and feel free to follow up with me. Happy to have a conversation. And again, it helps, starting earlier helps reinforce the Answer GPS, right? So Answer GPS is the key here. We really want to focus on this. And this also, how many of you have had students who've struggled with understanding teacher assignments? Drop a 1 in the comment if you've, right? Lots of 1s, right? So different teachers have different ways of assigning things. Answer GPS is a way of making sure you understand how every teacher assigns a homework assignment or any kind of assignment. You can break it down. Got it. Okay. So this is a real world example, real life. My students use this when I do executive functioning tutoring with students in 7th grade. I teach them Answer GPS because they're learning how to manage their Google Classroom assignments and stuff like that. They use Answer GPS. It's the same process. So this is something that you can totally use. So just to recap, I just want to tell you, okay, so we got 11th grade, the most demanding year. 10th grade gives you time, gives you flexibility, gives you ability to make a better brain, as well as score the most points possible. So I'll take some questions. Oh, that's a good question. How many times a week do you recommend meeting with students? So standard time that I recommend is about once a week, average. In the summer, this can vary with vacations and stuff, so students can do different exercises and things, but it's about once a week. And how much homework do they do after the test? Okay, that's a great question too. So normally you should probably be doing about 3 to 4 hours of test prep homework at least a week, plus practice tests. So the way that I try to make that less demanding is by integrating that homework with their real school assignments. Again, that's practice with purpose. The one thing that cannot be integrated are practice tests, and most my students take at least 8 full-length practice tests before they sit for their first test. That's, I mean, 8 minimum. Most of them take 15, 20. I've had students take 30 practice tests. Okay. It's a lot, but that makes it, because my students who take that many tests, they're like, haven't I taken this test before? It's like, no, you haven't. But every test is the same test. So that really helps them understand, like, oh, okay, this isn't about individual questions. This is one exercise over and over and over again. Okay. So I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway was from today. Please share below. Type more if you want to continue this conversation later. We can talk about booking a time to have a phone call. And DM me GPS for more info about how to get started. And thank you all so much for joining. This was a blast.